Hello, I'm Esther Hobbs, and this is my film adaptation review for Dr. Ross's Vampire Lit, Spring 2026. The book and film I've chosen for my review is Dracula, specifically the book Dracula by Bram Stoker, edited by John Edgar Browning and David J. Scowl, and Bram Stokers Dracula, the film, directed by Francis Coppola, starring Gary Oldman, Winona Ryder, and Keanu Reeves. I feel like it was majority faithful of an adaptation. I think it captured the main themes and ideas well, even if it was more of a modern take than what was originally written. I think casting was perfect, specifically with Gary Oldman being Dracula and being able to portray first the elderly vampire in his castle, like in the book, and then also the change with the romantic aspect. I think that he still was able to portray the sophisticated version of Dracula or Vlad in a perfect way as well, even though that wasn't originally in the story. And I think both of them still have good aspects of the original Dracula character, and of course the more modernized, version that we can sympathize with. I think that another shout out needs to be made to Keanu Reeves for, while being like a younger actor at the time, did a great job portraying the innocence and still like the forced maturity and professionalism for the character, who was still more of like an introverted, introspective individual, but was still going out of his way to meet those standards for Mina, who he was in love with. I would say that Mina specifically, Mina Ray, was the first instance of Coppola's creative decision-making. Like, her character was a little bit more multifaceted, maybe not in the best way in the movie than in the book, and mainly because of her infidelity with Dracula being almost immediate in the story versus in the book, she's faithful throughout the entire thing. If she ever seemed to be sympathetic with Dracula as a character, it was towards the end, as in the movie, but it was always attributed to her being corrupted by the blood that she had drank from him versus, these memories she had of his traumatic experience of her death. Because in their encounter in the movie, he begins to describe his past love, and she can guess that it's a princess, and she can feel his suffering almost as if she was there, and that was her. This is never fully explained in the movie, and I wish they had, if that was the direction they were going, but I think it still was able to draw in another type of crowd while still trying to be faithful to the backstory of Vlad the Impaler and the Turkish general and conqueror aspect, which was added to his monster-like traits, I guess, in the book itself. I think as well that it kind of came off as a surprise to me that the blood-sucking and vampire assaults were definitely highly sexualized in the movie, and it was just a lot more like in your face than in the book. In the book, you kind of had to read into it. In the book, there was just a little like wording and details that kind of tipped the Victorian reader off to know, like, oh, this feels very intimate, this feels strange, but like enticing. Their allure, their seductive traits were definitely overemphasized for someone who hadn't read the book, hadn't read anything vampire literature wise, or maybe that wasn't even what they were used to watching, like that same sort of terror. Specifically with the scene with Dracula's wives, it was completely different than in the book. In the book, it was mainly just trying to demonstrate their alluring in that reaction on Jonathan, challenging his love for Mina, I guess, almost like a test of sorts, but nothing happened. Whereas it not only showed their initial like assault on him, all three of them at once, but after they were gotten rid of later on, it demonstrates that he was basically like given over to them for the extent of his time as a prisoner in Dracula's castle. And I thought that was really interesting. because it just kind of adds them more than in the book. They're kind of like this mysterious group of women, but I think it still kept up the themes of like female vampires consuming children and that being part of their corruption, as women supposed to be the givers of life, they were the takers of life, and that was definitely a lot more obvious again in the movie, but at least it was portrayed in such a way that the themes that were made in the book could not be missed, and I think that that was a good way to go about it. The set was really good as well. I think every scene, like from the castle and like the dark and dreary sort of lighting and setting, that was perfect for like a submersive, almost like on the verge of 80s fantasy vibe, specifically on the scene when Lucy's getting attacked. The lightning, the dancing in the rain, the creature, that was when he was basically portrayed as more of a werewolf type monster. I think that that was really interesting and a very good like artistic way to like invest the audience in the scene and kind of build suspense, but like put that creative spin on it. I think the same thing kind of happened with Mina's attack, when right after he forced her to drink the blood from his chest, he was like this vampire bat type thing instead. And I think that kind of just shows that even if it wasn't directly or explicitly stated in the book, Bram Stoker was trying to demonstrate to the audience that as a vampire, Dracula had these several different forms. He could control animals, but then he could also turn into different things himself. Specifically in the book, he was described as like a monster type creature, but then also as a giant bat in Lucy's window. And I thought that was probably where the original idea came from. But overall, I do think it's pretty faithful. I think that anything added was intentional and a good way to influence newer generations on their appreciation for the original vampire, basically, and to almost educate them on the themes of like fidelity and seduction from a vampire's like perspective. And basically, I think Coppola did a really good job. I think that there are a few things that I could pick apart, even down to the costumes. They were all very intricate and specific. And Jonathan's hair turning gray and then white, just demonstrating his building stress, which was also like, if you don't have the thoughts and the narration that you would in the book, you wouldn't understand the toll it was taking on all of the men that were protecting Lucy and Mina, and the trauma aspect of it wouldn't be fully grasped. So this concludes my presentation, and I conclude that it was wonderful. It was wonderful to watch. It was thrilling and sensational, and a wonderful take on Bram Stoker's Dracula.